Hello and welcome to When I Stop Fighting, the podcast, hosted by Daryl Dittmer, where we talk about the fight or fights that so many of us engage in this lifetime, as well as ways to potentially relieve ourselves of those fights. Let's get started. Welcome to When I Stop Fighting, the podcast, where we talk about the fight or fights that so many of us engage in this lifetime, as well as strategies to slow or stop those fights. My name is Daryl Dittmer. Today I'm joined by Dr. Michael Jaquith, life coach, podcaster, and host of the Catholic Life Coach for Men podcast. So happy to have you on, Michael. Welcome.
Daryl, thank you so much for having me on. I am very excited. You're a wonderful man, and I've been looking forward to this.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. You are as well. I was very excited to have you join me today. I'd like to start by asking my guests how they got to be where they are today. There's always a great story that drives a person to either change or help others or move in a different direction. And I love to hear those stories. What is that story for you, Michael?
You know, it's such a long story. I'm just going to give you a quick highlights version, and you're welcome to dive in and dig on any spot you like. But I grew up in a pretty shoddy beginning, a lot of abuse, some bad stuff went down. I became an angry young man, very hurt, pursued the church of hedonism, chased ladies, drank alcohol, praised the Lord, never did hard drugs. By the grace of God, I was spared that. And because I would have been messed up if I had. And eventually I kind of came to this point after doing that for over a decade. And I'm like, that's not working. I got to find something. And so I found my way to the faith. And I found Jesus, and I said to myself, cool, this is the fix. I got it all fixed up now, right? We're good to go. I got married. We had our first child. And then I realized I actually didn't have it all fixed up. And so, throughout my life, I've been very blessed that at different times and different seasons, I've been blessed to have tremendous mentors come into my life and really offer profound wisdom and insight and help me to develop something that I sorely lack, which is humility. I think it's a lot of us today, we get kind of full of ourselves and, look, I've got some impressive parts of my past. I've got some dark parts of my past. But it's very easy to come into that and say, oh, yeah, look at how awesome I am. And I had that going hard when into my marriage. And God really stepped into my life in a powerful way. And he said, actually, you're not quite so hot as you think. And I had some great mentors, a tremendous amount of grace, and a lot of really hard soul searching. And to be honest, I was never done. I am by no means going to say I have arrived and have it all figured out. I still have big stuff I'm working on. I think we all do. I think one day the good Lord will call me home and I'll be like, okay, finally, get a break.
I couldn't agree more. I humility, mentors, I can relate to all of that. And my greatest mentor, or at least the one that I know of to be my greatest mentor, Bud, which is someone I've mentioned many, many times and have talked about in my book. But he said to me one day as I was struggling, wrestling, fighting, just life. And it sounds like you kind of did the same thing, right? The struggling, wrestling, fighting life. He said, Daryl, when you stop fighting, the fighting stops.
Yeah.
And right. And that, I'm not sure how that resonated with me when I was 19 years old, because that's the first time I heard it. But I do know that it's been dinging me ever since. So how does that sort of ding for you? What does that mean to you?
What struck me really powerfully, as you said, at this particular time, is I thought about my marriage. Now, I'm a very strong type A personality. There's a lot of different temperament systems out there. My favorite is probably Big Five, and so in that one, I'm extremely disagreeable. You may have figured out this already. And so what that means is that I love conflict. I love the tension. I love to be right. Justice. Justice and I are sweet bedfellows. And the problem is, Justice and I are such sweet bedfellows. There was in plenty of nights, that's been all I've slept with, was just the Justice, and not with my wife. And being this combative style temperament, it's been very natural for me to say, well, actually, you see, wife, here is your failings, and let me expound upon them to a great logical effect. And you can probably imagine that this goes over incredibly well. And one of my mentors, one of my mentors said to me once, Michael, you can have justice or you can have peace. And I was like, oh, he said, all you have to do is stop fighting. Because here's the thing, even in a marriage, if you're married and your wife is like level 9 out of 10 angry, If you just refuse to fight, eventually she runs out of fighting too. Like it takes two. You gotta be in it. And it's so hard because that justice piece is so powerful. And odds are there's some part of it you probably got right. But oh, that learning slowly to just let go, let the words pass, that storm of negative energy kind of come in and pass through, and just to choose the peace is, well, let's just put it this way. It's a lot more fun to sleep next to my wife than to sleep next to Lady Justice.
Yes, I 100% understand that. That's and it's an interesting way to think about the fighting, because I've thought about fighting, and my first fights were with drugs and alcohol, and with telling myself I'm not good enough, and the insecurities and all of the things that I felt inside, and then I reached out and for drugs and alcohol, and that was sort of my story. But then I went through treatment and I got sober, and I found out that, wow, this fight is, after Bud told me that, this fight is not necessarily with the world. It can be with the world. It can be with, it can be with wife or husband or boyfriend or friends or whomever, or just the world, which, seems to be happening a lot these days. But the greatest adversary for me, as I've clicked into more subtle fights over time, has been myself. I'm fighting me. And have you found that to be true for you also?
This is so funny. Yesterday, one of my mentors said to me, here's my challenge for you, Michael. I want you to, going forward, to take that every single time you get triggered, Michael, get triggered, to interpret that as something's going wrong with me. Don't even ask, what did the other person do wrong that triggered me? Ask, what inside me allowed me to be triggered? And let me make a practical example. Now, I mentioned earlier, I'm a very disagreeable feller. And that means that sometimes, I've got 6 kids, and that means that sometimes when they're acting up, I get worked up a little bit, right? And okay, fair enough, man. I will totally acknowledge there are sometimes I get too worked up. That's something I'm working on. It's one of my challenges. However, there's 2 ways if my wife calls me out on that I can respond. Way number 1, Michael, you're being too hard on them boys. Michael responds, what do you know anyways, woman? What are you talking about here? You don't even know anything, blah, 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 blah. I don't know why that actually came out. It just was right there. And way number 2 is, tell me what you're thinking. I may not agree entirely with you, but I can respond in a dialogue and be open, acknowledging there are times I am a little too hard. And the difference between those two has nothing to do with what my wife said. It has everything to do with the state of me and what's going on inside me. And my claim, and what the claim of the mentor given to me, I'm still working on this one. It was said yesterday, still like fresh blood, is when those trigger points are there, that's a sign there's something I still have to resolve and come to terms with internally. And to view the trigger as being just about my weakness or it's my problem, not about that other person. And I thought, boy, that's an interesting way to look at this here, because I didn't like that at all. All of a sudden, my little Lady Justice friend was long gone. I'm kind of like, Meh. That's
tough. No, that's really tough, and that's the work, right? That is, and we've taken different paths, and everybody takes a little bit different path, and everybody's stories are a little bit different, but all the stuff that goes on internally, and I look at it like we all sort of meet on the playing field of emotion. We all feel very, very similar things. We feel the anger, and we feel the fear, and we feel the happy, and we feel the hurt, and we feel the contentment and the peace and the joy, and the good stuff and the not so exciting stuff. But it's those times where we're confronted with ourselves, and I always look at those as a crossroads. And I'm so happy you bring up mentors, because they've just been so crucial for me in my development, and it sounds like absolutely crucial for you in your development. But they lead us to, or they've, for me, they led me to look at me, turn it around and look at me, and Daryl, when you stop fighting, the fighting stops. That's the whole answer. So when I think about, and I am also a type A personality. I can be impatient. I can be, all of those things.
I knew there's a reason I liked you.
we got to get this done, and an example today, actually, we're getting to go on fresh blood, as you mentioned. I like that word. We're taking off on a little RV trip this weekend, and I've got this podcast with you, and I'm thinking, oh, we got to hurry, and so I just latch on and I take control, and I okay, we got to do it this way, and I'm with my wife, and meanwhile I'm observing myself do this, and I'm having to just settle down, and take the opportunity that I have to settle myself down, because it's either fight myself and then fight my wife, which is never fun, or listen to what I've learned over the years and settle myself down. And whether that's breathing or whether that's some of the, daily practices that I engage in, or practicing gratitude, or whatever that is that allows me to settle myself down, I think is absolutely crucial. So what kind of things for you have been most advantageous in terms of slowing and or stopping what can be the fight?
I think, as speaking as a man in particular, for my own story, I have found that most of my work in that direction is done long before the actual event comes up. Let me maybe make this point with a cute little story. So I mentioned earlier we have 6 kids. We go to church, and church starts at 8:30. The church is about 15-minute drive away. This particular Sunday morning, my wife and I don't know what happened. We both wake up early. I get up at 5:15 every morning. She gets up about 6. And so we always wake up early. This morning, whatever reason, we both woke up together at 7:50. We need to leave at 8:15. All 6 children are still in bed. So now imagine, I can see, you're kind of laughing already. And yeah, you can guess with my temperament what my response was. It was this, do it all now. Go, deploy. No time for talking. You are not allowed to have feelings. Shove that food in your mouth. I don't care what your feelings are right now. Right?
I love it.
By contrast, this was so hard for me, and I failed this so badly. My wife reaches over the first thing. It's 7:50. I'm like, it's 7:50. I'm like ready to leap out of bed. And she reaches over and takes my hand. I'm like, what? There's a strange tugging in my hand. Something must be wrong. Maybe like with the house on fire too, with how bad this morning's going, that might be the case. Well, I look around and she wants to talk. And my brain's like, what? We don't have time for talking right now, woman. What are you thinking? But she wanted to talk about it. And this is where I made my big mistake of the day. Is I brushed it off and said, no, we don't have time. We got to go now. And well, that caused a fight. And that fight took about, 5 minutes or so. And she wanted probably about 2 minutes worth of talking, connecting, coming together as a team. And so I traded 2 minutes of constructive conversation for 5 minutes of fighting and an entire day of bitterness and grumpy feelings. So at the end of this day, I was writing about this. And I think journaling is an incredibly important thing that we as men need to do. And I did the math, and it came up about as sad as I just discussed it with you right now. And I thought, well, golly, that was kind of a dumb trade, Michael. Why'd you make that trade? And as I looked at it, I realized just how easy it is for me to lose perspective of the big things. And so I made a note to myself that the next time this happens, to remember the big thing is not the clock. And I think as we go through this, and just these little things, I just program my brain. And there's little things I have programmed in there when my wife starts to get herself going. Women do this thing sometimes where like they're in a mood and they'll say one thing and then they say something bigger and something bigger. They start the accusations start flying and you're like, whoa, what caused this? This is like a full on like bullet storm. I don't even get it. And as a man, you're sitting there like, this came out of the blue. I have no idea where it's coming from. Like, it seems highly unfair. And if you pre-program in your brain, when my wife does this, she's probably really sad about something. It probably has nothing to do with any of these words coming out right now. There's probably something underneath, triggering some big feelings, and she doesn't really know how to express those big feelings. Or at the very least, maybe I should amend that to say she probably doesn't know how to do it in a way that men are going to be able to receive it. When women do this with women, they all get it. They do their big things, their feelings, their big words. They all like, oh, yeah, that makes sense to me. And I'm over there like, that makes sense to me. I don't know what you're talking about. And we see this interaction happen like in the women's circle. But as a man, just knowing that her brain works differently and telling myself ahead of time, when this happens, here's what I'm going to do. I've even built little safety nets that say, oh, look, my blood pressure is going up. It's time for me to pull myself out of the situation. Because you know what? You don't have to unsay words you don't say in the first place. And so I've learned if I can just have those warning signs built in. And all of these have come from journaling events. These have come from prayer time and reflection time, meditation time, looking at things that have gone wrong and saying, next time I'll do it this way. It's a long-winded answer, but I hope that helps.
Oh, it helps a ton. Oh, absolutely. No, I love it. I love hearing every word of that. The lessons are what we're here for, right? I mean, that's how I feel about my life and me stopping the fighting. And I've had plenty of allies. And quite honestly, one of my allies is my wife. And she is the most wonderful ally to get me to look at things differently and to want to be different. Because it's easy for me to fight. That's how I grew up. I grew up fighting, wrestling, everything, rub some dirt on it. And if there's not a bone sticking out, you're not hurt. And no pain, no gain, all those kinds of things. So as I've gone on and as I've tried to be better as a person, as a husband, as a dad, as, everything in my life, I've had to sort of latch on to allies and also discard things that aren't allies for me. And I think that's, just as important, whether it's difficult humans or whatever it is, the way I eat, the way I, handle my stuff, handle my business, the time that I spend doing certain things. But my greatest allies, other than, all of the wonderful information that comes into my world and into my life by having great conversations with people like you or, with my mentors or, wherever, if we're in this life, we probably know here everything that we need to do. It's just a matter of, right? We've heard it 1,000 times. How do we implement? How do we deploy? I love that word for the kids going to church. But so how do we do that? And for me, it's gathering the tools. It's the breathing practices. It's gratitude. It's writing. It's a number of things that sort of slow me down so I don't have to have that sort of explosion. And it's become much more subtle over time. The fights have become more subtle over time. And that's a wonderful thing because I know we're getting somewhere, I think.
Amen.
Right. Which is a great feeling. So in terms of some of the daily practices, you mentioned journaling, prayer, and those are beautiful things, and mentors. And I'm sure your wife is a great, catalyst for helping and, as my wife is, and she's gentle with me, which is wonderful because I'm not a gentle guy. And I'm learning to be, and I've learned to be much more so, but so as we gather these tools and deploy them in our lives, what are the more subtle fights that you deal with now, or that sort of show up for you?
Let me tell you another story. I love stories. I have a 10-year-old daughter, and, like all daughters, they have times where they have some emotions. It happens from time to time. And she was having some emotions and handling an event objectively poorly. And in response to her handling it poorly, I decided I should join her, and I decided I would handle it poorly as well. And so I raised my voice, and I yelled, and I got very upset. And she storms out of the room in tears, and I walked over this side, right? Okay, so classic, not my greatest moment parenting. So what do? I waited till I calmed down. I don't know, maybe 10 minutes. And I want to be all the way calm. I'm going to give her a little longer. Fun little side fact here. Biologically, women take longer for aggression hormones to process through their body. Partly because men have testosterone, which is a hormone that can be used as a stress response hormone, but that can continue to persist as a baseline in us and when we're calm. And so because of that, women just biologically, and many other factors, take longer to calm down when they get upset. So I give a little longer. And I go downstairs and I go to the room And I'm just going to Sally. It's not her real name. And I walk up to her and I say, Sally, I need to apologize. I shouldn't have yelled. I lost my temper. I'm sorry. And she looks at me, she says, that's fine, Dad. She actually wasn't upset. She was calmed down too. That's fine, Dad. She starts walking away. I grab her hand gently. I say, no, it's not fine. You don't understand. I have screwed up. It was not fine. And I have done wrong to you. And I'm asking you to forgive me. And that caught her attention a little more. And she heard that. She processed that. And she looked at me and says, oh, I forgive you, Dad. And I could tell there's a lot more real. There's some depth to that. And I gave her a sweet hug. And as we were walking out the room, one of the things that's interesting about the way that we as humans work is that we can have an injury, do the right thing to care for the injury, and end up stronger. It's like, for example, if you break a bone and you set it properly and, care for it and let it, when it heals, there's actually more bone mass present than there was before the injury. It's actually stronger. And I think there's something like that in relationships too. And I'm not encouraging you to go out and pick a fight just to try to actualize this. There's better ways. But the point of this story is to say that on the little things, to realize that when we screw up, can we view it as an opportunity for something greater yet? And that's hard for me as a man, partly because I know I'm in the right, which of course I am, but also partly because it's just like this change of mindset that is uncomfortable to get over. But when we're there, it's subtle. But it's like going beyond not fighting. It's like transforming the damage done of the fight into something stronger. And as I reflected about this event later on in the evening, I realized not only did I repair my information with she who's not actually called Sally, but I call Sally, but I role modeled for her what to do when she loses her temper as well. And I let her experience what it feels like to be receiving that. So there's an empathy boost there as well. And so I thought to myself, oh my goodness, what an amazing gift that came, because instead of fighting my own pride, my own sense of justice, that I just surrendered all that, went down there and said, I'm sorry, Sally. And then really made it a real apology. I didn't let her, because she would have walked out and said, that's fine, Dad. And I could have let it go. I'm like, no, honestly, that would have been easier. My pride would have been salvaged a bit. Like, it was more humbling for me to say, no, it's really not okay. Does this make sense?
100%. No, that's beautiful. And that's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful example of not just sort of pinging off the surface and going away, right? It's going deeper than that. And I think that to me was beautiful to hear. And especially, with a young daughter and it would be very easy. And I can see, as having had a couple of younger boys and, seeing these things just ping off of them where it's just, okay, that's fine. No, don't worry about it. Well, no, this is real. This happened. And this is something we need to repair. I think that's a beautiful story. And as we improve, and this is something that I love so much about living a life where we're healing and where we're changing and where we're making a conscious effort is the more that I stop the fight with me and hence the fight with the world stops and the fight with everyone else stops, or at least slows, and I can become better for those people. And that's to me, that's the healed bone that gives us, more bone mass than we had before, because we're helping to heal everyone. Even as simple as, passing somebody on the sidewalk and paying attention to, I'm not worried about all the stuff going on with me. I smile at that person, and maybe it makes that person have a great day. Those kinds of things, which are extremely subtle. I think, there's examples with those close to us, and there's examples of things that we can do outside of us to contribute, right? To contribute to the world being a little bit better place, one little thing at a time. So thank you for that story. I have wondered, and I have not ever asked this question, I don't think, but I'm excited to ask it. And as you being someone who is a life coach and helps a lot of people and is able to teach these sorts of things, is it difficult to And does there have to be more emphasis on what you need to do for you to be able to maintain that, or can you find yourself giving so much that sometimes you forget about Michael? Can that be real?
There's a funny Bible passage that when you first read it doesn't make any sense, and it's, to those who have, even more will be given; to those who have not, even what they have will be taken away. And that is a more complicated version of the simpler version of saying you cannot give what you do not have. But I like the Bible version better because it really puts the emphasis on what has to be first. And here's the truth, Daryl. If I am not growing myself, if I am not striving, I cannot give. And I can look at this from a grace perspective. I can look at this from an intellectual perspective. And look, I'm a smart guy. I've read a lot of books. And so I could sit here and I could give you all this different book knowledge. But at a practical level, if I want to help another man, I have to be able to connect with him with an emotional connection. We as men, we like to think that our self lives up here in this upper gray matter. But the reality is, and science is learning this slowly too, there's tons of gray matter distributed through your whole body. Your nervous system does not focus solely in your head. You've got major nerve system clusters throughout your body, chest, wherever. And there's so much more to us than just dry abstract knowledge. And this relationship dynamic, this emotional dynamic, if I do not have this emotional bit, then even what I have will be taken away because I won't be able to share it with someone. But if I do have it, then even more will be given. Because let's imagine you're a man who came to me for help, and I've got some emotional presence in my tank because through prayer, meditation, serving my family. If I can share it with you, you actually share it with me. So I can even get even more by sharing it with you. And so I like the biblical version because it really puts the first thing first. I've got to do the basics to care for myself. I mean, I can literally reach over here right now. Okay, that's not my reach, actually. I put it on the other side of the night stand. I can grab my journal for you and show you my journal. And if that journal gets too dusty, that's a warning sign for me. Last night I took my family to the church, and there's this beautiful sung prayer that we do about once a month at the church, and I don't get all the details, but it's just beautiful, beautiful. And I sing bass, and the kids are there, and it's so powerful because it sets the tone of the household. You'll hear even the kids just humming, the very da 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 da. That is simple, prayerful, reflective tones. And I believe what that does is that aligns our heart and our mind and our soul so that when I meet someone, so I see you this morning, right? This was last night's happened. And I'm in a spot where I can share more fully and deeply with you because I have that foundation, because I have that bigger connection, if you will, that I've orientated myself. And as a man of faith, I believe the proper orientation is that everything flows to me from God. And then I can be a channel to allow it to go to others. And that connection has to be there. The connection has to be strong. And if you're not a Christian, I get it. But most, even atheists, still believe there's something bigger out there, whether it's meditation, whatever. But we need that connection. And bluntly, this is not enough. Like, I'm a strong dude. Like, I just injured my back a little while lifting 385 pounds in a deadlift. I've got some strength here, right? But you know what? This is nothing. That's not going to make my wife's heart love me. That's not going to make my children see the goodness and virtue of a good life and how to get there. It's got to come from somewhere else. And so if I do not have, even what I have will be taken away. But if I do have, even more will be given.
I love that. I really do. And I could not agree more. We talked a little bit about, just how we get better and how we heal and how we move forward. And one of the things I find that's fascinating is sometimes, and it doesn't happen all the time, and not quite as much anymore, but for a period of time, I would be confronted with a situation and I would think, I don't react that way anymore. Or, I don't do that anymore, or that doesn't bother me anymore. And that is such a wonderful feeling. And I agree with you. I spent most of my life being, 6'6", about 220, a fairly big dude and strong and, lift weights and all that sort of thing. But I'm nothing when it, compared to anything that happens inside of me. There's so much power and so much, and through the meditation and through the gratitude and through the prayer and that's where the strength is. And that's the strength I can give away. When you mentioned first things first, that was one of the things that my my mentor, my greatest mentor, said to me. He said early on, he said, first things first, and the rest shall be added on. He said, you have to take care of your internals first, and however you do that, over time, however you figure that out. And for me, it's become, daily practices and things that I do every single day because that empowers me, and it empowers and it powers. So we're getting close to wrapping it up here, but if you were going to give advice to someone sort of starting on this path in terms of healing or moving their life forward from a difficult place, what would that advice be?
Two things. Number one, I would encourage you to look at yourself with tremendous humility. Because here's the funny thing. When we look at our lives and we realize that we have the power to be able to make a change, because whatever we do, we know when we're screwing up. Like deep down in a man's soul, he's like, this is wrong. I shouldn't be doing this. This isn't helping. We know that, but we feel trapped and we feel helpless so often. And so number one is to realize you have the potential to change. It's in there. It's pride that's blocking. It's pride that says it's not my fault. I can't do it. Well, see, she did this or he did this. The excuses are there. I don't care how much. When I find someone who's in excuse mode, you can debug excuse after excuse. They'll always find another one. But that humility to look internally and saying, it's my fault. The error is in here. But then there's hope, because that means the fix is in here also. And if the fix is in here, whoa, I'm not helpless anymore. All of a sudden now there's a possibility things could get better. But the number two, I have to really emphasize this one is so critical. You cannot do this alone. This is not a statement of moral obligation. This is a statement of metaphysical reality. The human creature was not designed to fly solo. It just doesn't work. Like imagine if you took an airplane and put only one wing on it. Aside from looking kind of funny, even if you got off the ground, you're just going to spiral and burn in a fireball of death. And truth be told, Daryl, that's what a lot of us are doing, is we're spiraling into a fireball of death because we think we can go it alone. And we have to have someone else. And in a very powerful way, men need men and women need women. I love my wife dearly. She's a wonderful woman. There's a lot of women in my life that I respect and admire, but the fundamental metaphysics reality is same as the physical reality of an apple falling on a tree, hitting Sir Isaac Newton in the head. Same deal as how this metaphysics work for how these dynamics work. My wife cannot give me what I need for the growth the way a man can. It's just incommensurate with her role, with her nature. I need another man who will hold me accountable. He'll slap me upside the cheek, metaphorically, if needed, and say, dude, you're messing up. You're not doing it. Get on there. Seriously, dude, I'm not going to take this. That's just not, our wife can't do that. In a similar way, I can't do that for my wife. She needs other women in her lives to do this. This is not a statement about either gender being better or worse. This is a statement that genders are different. And you need an auto mechanic for an auto, and you need a doctor for if you're fixing a human body. And you swap those two, it doesn't work very well. And as a man, if I try to go it alone, I'm just going to spiral and die. So two things. Number one, the fix lies inside. There's way more problem inside you than you think, but way more solution also. Number two, don't go alone. Find someone else that you can be real with.
I love it. And I think that's beautiful. It just brings me back to one of the things I was told about humility is a definition for humility is being teachable. And I think that nails it. And for me, I needed the 12 steps when I first got sober and when I was first delving into, and that included a lot of people that helped me along the way. And it was, I got slapped around by, and back then, I don't know if it's still that way, but I agree with you 100%. Back then it was, men respond to help men and mentor them, and women respond to help women and mentor them. And that's how it worked. And I certainly still believe that. I'm not sure that's still, the case in those groups, but couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, Michael, and such wonderful stories and wonderful things. And if you would, please just share how we'll be able to find you and your work.
Absolutely. So I'm a simple man when it comes to these kind of things. I don't understand complex marketing. I'm a Catholic. I do life coach. I work with men. All you got to type in is Catholic Life Coach for Men. It's the name of my podcast, name of my website. As I said, I got no creative bones in my body. My wife laughs at me. My 13-year-old daughter plays this game now. She does this. I kid you not. Oh, I love her dearly. She holds up like different colors. Says, "Dad, is the same color, different color?" I'm like, blue. And she's like, "No, Dad, this one is taupe." I don't even remember what the name was. Whatever it was. Like I was like, I don't know. They all look like blue to me, kiddo. And so Catholic Life Coach for Men, and I work with Christian men. It's the name of the podcast. It's the name of the website.
I love it, Michael. Thank you so much. I very much appreciate you and appreciate your time and your stories and all of your wonderful wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale, for having me on. This has been a blast.
Take care.